Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jacqueline Dorsey of Lean Frontiers and I'll serve as your host today. I'm excited to bring to you today a short webinar on lean human resources facilitated by Drew Locher. Drew is an award-winning author of 4 books including The Complete Lean Enterprise, Lean Office and Service Simplified, Unleashing the Power of 3P, and Value Stream Mapping for Lean Development. Drew also works to implement innovative business management strategies in a wide spectrum of business environments, including manufacturing and services. Due to our limited time for this webinar, we will not be doing a Q&A session, but this will be recorded if you want to refer back to it later. So for now, let me turn things over to Drew.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're coming in loud and clear.
Good. Very good. Just want to thank everyone for joining us, realizing this is a holiday, Good Friday, so appreciate you taking time out to join us today on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, cultural change. So the title of the webinar today is Creating Mindsets, Habits, and Skills for Cultural Change. So just to start off with a brief review and just get some definitions out of the way so we're all together on this, is what does it really mean to be a lean enterprise? And I think more and more organizations are understanding what this means. It's not the tools and such, it's really developing a culture of continuous improvement. And what does that really mean is that trying to get all team members, trying to determine ways to improve their processes and overall our organization, over time. So really getting everyone in the organization in time being good PDCA thinkers, Plan, Do, Check, Act thinkers, Denning's well-known improvement cycle methodology that we like to refer to. So if you think about this, getting people to think this way, that also implies that people are willing to embrace change because continuous improvement would require such. And that is not easy for most people, as we'll talk about. Most people are pretty fearful of change. So we've got to deal with those fears, and later in the webinar we'll talk about some of the origins of those. Just kind of briefly jumping ahead, what we want to do is kind of help people out. We know that people have a fear of the unknown. We also know that people have this need for certainty. It's part of our safe security mechanism inbred in us. But it can help us out in terms of making sure that what we're doing is going to be successful and we're going to be viewed as successful. So this is some of the challenges that we have to overcome, the people's need for certainty, fear of the unknown. And what we really want to try to do with deliberate practice, and you'll hear me say that multiple times throughout the webinar, is we want to replace people's need for certainty and the known, and replace that with a genuine curiosity and also confidence in the PDCA methodology. That's kind of what we're after. This has been known for a long, long time. Dr. Deming, one of the great quality management gurus from way back, had his 14 points for management, and number 8 was drive out fear so that everyone can work effectively for the company. I was very fortunate to be in his presence several times and ask him 2 questions, and one was on this particular point. Why I don't understand fear in terms of, it's not like organizations and leaders are intentionally trying to instill fear in people. So can you explain? And he went on and gave numerous examples of how intentionally or even unintentionally organizations do just that, and the need to provide a safe environment for people to work in and work effectively, as in his terminology. So another thing I like to reflect on is the typical approaches to lean that many organizations take. One, we see this a lot of training of the masses, and then hope that they go apply it. And then another approach is events, whether they be rapid improvement events, Kaizen events, value stream mapping events, or even projects, like Six Sigma projects, having people go through a project or even two, or participate in an event or even two, and hope that they keep it going. And what I think many organizations are learning is that this event approach or episodic approach, where change is happening periodically, is really insufficient to create cultural change. So in this graphic, what I'm trying to convey here is that, let's say we're having a rapid improvement or a Kaizen event, and we're going to have maybe 6 or 10 people on that team. And we may have one this week. And then we might have another one, I don't know, maybe a month from now. We can only do so many of these things. And we're going to probably involve a different 6 to 10 people, because we want to get people involved. And then maybe a month later, we hold another event, and we're going to have another team of people, and we want to involve more folks. So it'll be a different 6 to 10 people, and so on. So this is, again, a very common approach that we see organizations taking. But what we'll kind of make the argument of today is that this is really insufficient to develop the requisite mindset, skills, and abilities for change and also for problem solving and process improvement, but change in general. Because what happens is, there's an old expression: if you don't use it, you lose it. So if I've been involved in an event, say this month, and I'm not involved in another one, say for even a month or 2 months, I'm going to lose a lot of the knowledge and skills that I developed. There's been studies that go back 100 years ago. Edward Thorndike wrote The Psychology of Learning back in 1913, I believe it was. And back then he discussed what he called fading theory. And studies have kind of proven this since, though the numbers might vary based on what the person has learned or experienced. But generally speaking, people are going to lose about 80% of the skills and knowledge that they gained after about 2 weeks if they've not used it. And we can argue whether it's 4 weeks or 1 week, but the argument's still the same. It's sound. If you don't use it, you lose it. And so if you think about it, if I'm involved in an event this month or a project, this applies to Six Sigma projects, all of that, and then I'm not involved in another one for some time, that knowledge and skills that I gain, I'm going to lose much of it. And then I'll have to go through this relearning cycle. So if your organizations are taking this episodic event, project kind of approach to lean and continuous improvement, you probably shouldn't be too surprised that you're not getting the cultural change that we're hoping for, or it's taking a lot longer than maybe you would hope for. So those studies over many years have shown that it takes a minimum of 4 to 7 repetitions to begin skill development, just to begin, to put it to short-term memory. Culture and habit can take 17 to 27 repetitions or 1 to 2 months to begin to form a habit. Again, different studies will show different things on this based on the nature of work, the amount of repetitions, the time between cycles, the interruptions that happen in between those practice cycles. But I think, again, the point that this slide makes is still very valid. You need multiple repetitions. So just being on a Kaizen team or even 4 or 5 isn't enough. It's insufficient to create habit. Going through a Six Sigma project, maybe even 4 or 5, is insufficient really to make this a habit. And we're not even talking about mastery. We know mastery takes thousands of hours of practice. Most of us will never achieve that, myself included. But we're just talking about competency for now, getting competent with problem solving and process improvement, and also in terms of making change a habit. So what is needed is something in between the events and the projects. We need to be practicing PDCA, ideally in daily or near daily manner, near daily improvement. And, really the only way to do that is where the rubber hits the road. And by that I mean where the frontline supervisor or manager is working with their natural work teams to practice PDCA and solving problems and improving their processes. Because opportunities arise naturally in the course of every day that allow us to practice PDCA. And we might be able to get through that complete PDCA cycle in a day or maybe several days. But again, it doesn't have to be this long-term project to get through a full PDCA cycle. And with that repetitive practice, that helps people develop the requisite skills and catch, again, what I call the change habit. So you can think of it as really putting continuous into continuous improvement. So this is a bit of frustration for me when I speak with leaders in particular and start explaining what does it really take to create a new culture. They kind of refer back to the project basis, the event type basis, and I said that'll never get you there. It'll take a real long time to get there. You really need to engage your leaders, your frontline supervisors, managers, whatever titles they possess, and have them practice with their natural work teams first and foremost, as the opportunities arise. So we can create a cultural change, but only through deliberate practice, because an organization culture perpetuates itself through often unconscious daily practice. In the way the habits that we have already formed, the norms of behavior. So we can change those if we practice new behaviors. And with enough repetition, enough time, I think it could be several months, where we start to see those people start changing and creating new habits and new norms, which in turn gives us the new culture. So again, only through deliberate practice will this happen, of actual specific new behaviors. And we have to be very clear on what those behaviors are, practiced by leaders, because leaders define culture, and they need to have the opportunity supported as necessary with coaching, as we'll talk about later, to keep demonstrating those new behaviors until they become internalized to that leader. It becomes their habit and norm, and then in time, that'll start to spread to their natural work teams. Zig Ziglar, an author and motivational speaker, some of you may have heard of, had this quote: "Repetition is the mother of learning, the father of action, which makes it the architect of accomplishment." So that is very, very true in all learning. So to summarize so far, we're talking about to change a culture, we have to kind of change the way we think, act, deliberately change the way we think, act, interact with others, how we make decisions, and communicate. So this is this is a pretty tall order. I never said this would be easy, so we should get started as soon as possible, is kind of what I always say. But there are a few things, too, that we can put into practice that might help as well. So that's what we'll go over next. So back to some things that we know about people. Number one is the human brain is basically a lazy organ. It helps us survive. It seeks to conserve energy. It consumes like the most energy in the body, and generally speaking, the body wants to conserve energy. So the brain does not like to work too hard. So we need to understand this. This is in how we're wired, how we are as beings. So we need to understand that when people resist change, this is actually quite natural. So before we're too quick to discard people or put them aside as being unreasonable or unwilling to change, just recognize that they're human. And people will respond to change differently, but all of us are not going to openly embrace it. The vast majority of people are going to resist it because it's part of our physiology. So we always want to spend less energy, and when we're doing things that are known and familiar to us, we spend less energy. And that's what we've got to kind of overcome. So some people have used the term comfort zone. It's been around since the 1980s, at least, that term. And in this little graphic, the greatest enemy to human potential is our comfort zone. So we need to, again, understand that and then help people along the path. Another fact that we know is the human brain seeks certainty. It's part of our safety mechanism, as I mentioned before. There's an expression from Pogo comic strips that I've been carrying around since I think like 1990 or thereabouts. The certainty of misery is better than the misery of uncertainty. I mean, think about what that means. The certainty of misery is better than the misery of uncertainty. So I like to ask people what their problems are, and people are very good at, telling me what their problems are. Then when we start talking about, what can we do about those problems, that's when the resistance kicks in. The certainty of misery is better than the misery of uncertainty. What they know today, even though they don't like it or they're displeased with it, it's known and it's comfortable to them. And they want to hold on to that. Because to go to something different, this uncertainty can consume a lot of energy. I might feel unsafe going to something else. I'm very comfortable in how I do things today. I feel successful. People see that I'm doing well. To go to something unknown, uncertain, is scary to me. It's like, thinking about stepping off a cliff for some people, because I might not be successful in the new way, and then people might view me negatively as a result. So what we need to do, and this is what happens for some of us where the light bulb kind of went on at some point in time, is we need to replace the need for certainty in the solution with certainty in the problem-solving or process improvement process, really the PDCA process. People often say to me when I'm in organizations, oh, you know what we have to do, that's why you have this confidence or whatever. And I said, I have actually no idea what you need to do. I can tell you what other organizations have done, but that doesn't mean you should do those. Well, with myself and my colleagues in the lean community, our confidence comes really from our process and the fact that we've had maybe, hundreds, if not more, opportunities to practice that process, see people have success with it. That's really where our confidence comes from. And that's what we need to help other people along that journey and reach that point. So replacing that need for certainty in a solution with certainty in the problem-solving and process improvement or PDCA process, that's really what we're after. And again, that is only going to come through deliberate practice where people are experiencing some having positive experiences with that process, and then they'll just want more and more and more of it. So something to think about. Certainty of misery is better than misery of uncertainty. A day or a week does not go by, and I don't say that, at least to myself. So why else do people resist change? I'm going to go over 3 models that have been around for decades, but they're important to recognize and kind of reference as we're dealing with people that are resisting change. So the first one is what is called the personal system. The right-hand side is external. The left-hand side is internal. The external side, people will exhibit their behaviors, general attitudes, short-term moods. People give us a peek on the inside of what their beliefs are. Sometimes they're stated, sometimes they're not stated. And then the internal, people's self-concept is made up of, in this model, 3 components: people's values, goals, and competencies. Values are your understanding of right and wrong. They come from a very young age, so organizations have difficulty affecting values. It can happen, but it's usually quite difficult. Goals, personal goals, business goals, that organizations can affect. Very often the resistance to lean, say the belief is lean won't work here, or that won't work. And that's the belief, and you start going through, okay, what's the source of this belief? Maybe it's the goals. It could be that the business is holding this individual accountable for goals that are conflicting with what we're trying to do with lean or change in general. Competencies, that is your full sum total of your knowledge and skills you've accumulated in your lifetime to date. And it could be your belief is originated here. I don't know what you're trying to do. You're trying to put a pull system in. What is that? I don't know. Or maybe they had past experiences that were quite negative. Generally speaking, competencies give us confidence. If you have a lot of knowledge and experiences that you can draw on, you tend to be more confident with regard to change. You've done it before and you know you can do it again. So when people are telling me, or resisting change, or they're telling me explicitly, that won't work, or we don't want to do lean, and leadership won't buy in, all these things, I kind of go through a mental checklist. Are their values in the right place? Yes, they're good people. Their mother loves them. They show up for work every day. They put a good day in for the organization. So check. So most people have proper values. Are their goals? What are they being held accountable for? And that's where very often we'll see some issues where the business is holding accountable an individual to certain goals that are conflicting with the change that we're considering. Very often it's competencies, and organizations can certainly affect competencies, through training and education and OC, other organizations, that kind of stuff. We can certainly help people with competencies in our organizations. And again, competence comes with competencies. This is one model that I use. This is one model that I refer to when I'm encountering resistance to change. And hopefully these models help you understand where others are coming from, perhaps ourselves included. The next one is Abraham Maslow, which many people have come across. His five levels of hierarchy of needs of people. Been around since 1943, been proven pretty much by every study around this subject since. Yet I would ask people, do you think about Maslow day in and day out with the people you're interacting with? Because I do. So if someone's resisting change, and the way this works is you have to meet the lower level needs before our people are open to the higher level needs. And I use Maslow's 5 levels of needs to really make the argument that what we're asking people to do in terms of continuous improvement and developing that culture of continuous improvement is really, there's a basic human need for it. You'll see it in the top level needs under self-actualization, problem solving, creativity. Process improvement and problem solving are creative activities. Then if you look at the next highest level, esteem, achievement, people want a sense of achievement. They need it. But they have to have those lower level needs attended to before they're open to the higher level needs. Let's start at the bottom. Physiological, water, food, sleep, etc. So when someone's resisting, I look at them, and are they breathing? Yes. They look like they're eating well. Okay, good. Maybe sleep. Maybe they're sleep deprived. That happens quite a bit. So trying to get somebody open to problem solving, if they're sleep deprived, you might be fighting a losing cause there. But usually it's check. They're meeting their physiological needs. The next level is safety, security in body, employment and resources, health, property. This is where a lot of folks are mired in. They're mired in this level. They're fearful of losing maybe a job. Lean is mean. Lean is an acronym for less employees are needed because they don't understand what it's about. And maybe they've experienced it in the past that organizations use continuous improvement to cut jobs. So they have good basis for feeling unsafe. People who resist what they don't understand, the safety mechanism of humans kicks in. So most people are mired in that second level. And that's why organizations have to make the statement and back it up and repeat the statement that no one will lose their job due to improving their job. So we've got to be very, very careful with that. Belonging, a sense of belonging, that is a human need. So when organizations tell me, Drew, we don't need to do huddles in the morning and get people together, they just come in, they just want a paycheck, I tell them that you really don't understand humans, because there is a sense of belonging. How an organization can go and give that sense of belonging is a top, it can vary, but we need to provide people with a sense of belonging. Now, fewer people are familiar with Frederick Kurtberg, who kind of did some studies back in the 50s to identify motivating and demotivating factors in a work environment. So the left side list is leading factors that lead to dissatisfaction and demotivation. And on the right-hand side are factors that are satisfying and motivating. And the way this kind of works is you have to have the left-hand side before people are willing to move to the right-hand side. So company policy, sure way to upset people is have a company policy they don't believe in. Supervision, relationship with boss. How many people on the call or people you know have thought about or actually moved on from one job to the next because they just didn't feel a connection with the boss. They didn't have a good relationship with the boss. Very, very common. Work conditions. If the place is very disorganized and unsafe, we need to attend to those needs before we can move to the right-hand side. Salary. People think salary is a motivator. It's actually a demotivator. And that is I'm not being funny about this. But people have to have enough money to be able to meet their needs, their physiological needs of themselves and their family. So the old expression, money can't buy happiness. That's why it's not on the right-hand side, but it's on the left-hand side. And again, people want to be part of a group. We're social creatures, so relationship with peers is on the left-hand side. Some people refer to the left-hand side as hygiene factors. You have to have them in your organization if you expect people to move to the right-hand side. Achievement, recognition, responsibility, growth. Some of these are difficult to give people, like advancement. There's only so many opportunities. But growth can be, developing people's abilities, like in problem solving and process improvement. That's an example of growth. So that's another model that I find that fewer people are aware of, but it's something going on. People are resisting. Maybe something's going on with the left-hand side of this table here. The other thing, too, that we have to be careful of, and leaders in particular, is to define the path. The reality is there's more than one path to your destination. And you have to give people some sense of freedom to find that path. If you direct the path, then people lose that sense of freedom. So leaders just have to define the PDCA process, let people kind of find their path. There's more than one way to get to your destination. And then with deliberate practice, they'll gain more and more confidence in that process, the PDCA process. That process will get them down an uncertain path to their destination. So how do we get people to overcome the fear of change? Really to feel safe. Deming used to say this quite often about providing a safe environment. So here's a quote from Charles Kettering, who, as you can see, ran General Motors head of research many years ago. The biggest job we have is to teach employees how to fail intelligently. We have to teach them to experiment over and over and to keep trying and failing until they find what works. So leaders in particular have to provide this safe environment, and I believe words really matter. We have to stop talking about things in terms of success and failure, because people don't want to fail. Back to it undermines their feeling of safety. So leaders have to change the terminology, the language, and say, let's say, instead of asking, let's try to see if it works, well, what if it doesn't? Or if it succeeds or fails, how about we, kind of frame the question or the discussion around, let's try and see what we learn. Humans like to learn. It's a positive thing. So the words that you use will evoke different reactions, and I'm talking to leaders here in particular. And really this whole thing about learning and experimentation really emphasizes what Deming intended with the PDCA cycle. He's famous for that and other things. I think leaders need to, as part of providing a safety net, a safe environment, need to really convey that, hey, we're in this together, this improvement and this change process. They can't just delegate this to others. They got to be out in front and lead this and say, hey, I'm trying to change, and you need to change. Leaders are role models. They need to accept that as part of their duties. And there's just basically comfort in numbers. If we're kind of working in teams, this allows people a little comfort and being a little more accepting of change. Leaders' real objective is to develop our ability to change and in turn our problem-solving and process improvement skills and abilities. But they've got to They can't delegate this to the continuous improvement group. And it's those leaders working with their natural work teams, developing their folks. This is the way it was taught to me in General Electric in the 1980s, and I know this is the way Toyota and others do it. So to wrap up, I think we're pretty much on time. The true objective of Lean is to create a culture of continuous improvement. And I'm very pleased. I think most organizations understand this now, but they're still struggling with it, which is understandable given the reasons we described today. To create that culture of continuous improvement, we've got to create a new mindset, habits, and skills for continuous improvement, and that is only going to happen through deliberate and regular practice in PDCA, driven by the local leaders working with their natural work groups, and really seizing on those opportunities to practice as they arise in the natural course of the workday. It doesn't always have to be everything a project and everything has to be chartered and all those things. There are just an abundance of opportunities that arise every day or every few days. We can go practice PDCA. So that's our presentation for the day. I hope you find it helpful in your journeys. And thank you again for taking the time out of your busy days.
All right. Well, Drew, thank you for facilitating our session today. Drew will also be facilitating a workshop and breakout at the 2016 Lean Accounting and Lean Management Summit held in San Antonio in August. If you want to learn more, please visit www.leanaccountingsummit.com. So to wrap up for today, I want to remind you all that today's webinar is being recorded. So look for an email following our time together for a link to the recording. Feel free to share this throughout your organization. Again, thank you, Drew, and thanks to each of you for participating in today's session, and have a great Easter. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.